Hello, welcome to Fieros Reborn. I am of name of Fieros at this time. Yeah, and at this time as well. And we are talking mental illness stuff now. This is Fieros' story time on Fieros Reborn, the channel. My name is Fieros Reborn, I suppose. Anyway, right. So I have got here some stuff from the website of name of huggingbarbedwire.com. .com? Is it .com or .org? Yeah, .com. Huggingbarbedwire.com. Huggingbarbedwire.com, right? / chapter 7. Now, this is an excerpt. How do you say that? Excerpt. An extract from some writing that I did under the title of When I Was Ill. And I did this in 2010, according to the website anyway, which, is 8 years ago now, and was a couple of years after I came out of hospital. So this writing here is all about me. Well, it's from the perspective of looking back after a couple of years of being out of hospital, and I'm looking back at my behaviour during, well, I don't know, during some time before. And I'm looking back at it and I'm trying to make sense of it, and I'm trying to explain things and express myself and try to kind of make sense of my behaviour, make sense of my story. There's something that I feel is going to be present in here. I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like I know that when I was writing this, I was looking at it from the perspective of having been through a mental illness, whereas now I look at that time as not having gone through a mental illness, but from having gone through a spiritual experience. So, hold on. Yeah. So it's likely that I will have some discussion, maybe some disagreement with what I've written down here a long time ago, because I'm a very different person to who I was in 2010 in some ways, and then in other ways I'm exactly the same person who I was in 2010, if not more like myself now, or just the same person but deeper, if you know what I mean. Like, sort of, how to say it? It's like I'm the same person, and like, some of the things that weren't me during that time, I've shaved them away. So the things that I took on from other people are not part of me anymore. So it's more of me. Like, you get more of my true self now than you did in the 2010 version of me. Yeah. But still, this is what we're going to use. This is what we're going to use for a prompt, because stuff gets a little bit hazy in my memory during this time of the stuff, because a lot of it's traumatic, and I guess a lot of it's buried in the subconscious of my brain. And I guess as a protection mechanism, my mind doesn't want me to remember it. Like, I can't. It's very hard for me to remember it because it's traumatic, so it stays buried unless I really dig for it. So I'm going to just read out some of this and then discuss it as we go along. So that's going to be what this Fieros' story time, the format this one's going to take. I might even do some more of this kind of thing, because there's a lot of material that my dad wrote about that time period in my life on the Hugging Barbed Wire website, huggingbarbedwire.com. It's been a long time since I've even looked at this stuff, because I just completely distanced myself from it for a number of years. I probably stopped doing anything really publicly related to mental health stuff, at least in 2014, if not before. So before that, I was doing like occasional presentations, occasional work with charities. I've got a little rethink badge here. occasional. I did an advert. I was featured in an advert for Rethink's Time to Change campaign. It's time to talk. It's time to change, or it's time to change. It's time to talk. I can't remember. They were trying to um, reduce stigma around mental health mental health disorders, mental illness, people who are having problems, people who are suffering in their lives. Yeah, so they were trying to open up conversations, and I was involved in an advert with my dad. I could go and get the picture if you like. I'll go and get the picture. So, if you recognise this scene at all from TV, I'm the one with the shiny, fucking shininess. Sorry, I'm the one on the right. I'm this one. No, I'm this one. Sorry, I'm this one. This is my younger self. Okay, yeah, you can. There you go. That's my dad on the other side. Yeah, a lot younger. Um, that's a fake smile. I'll have you know. That's not true happiness in the face. It's a smile for the camera face. It looks like I've got a black fucking one of my eyes is about to burst or something. Hold on. Don't have autofocus on, so or do I? Or do I? Yeah, it looks like one of my eyes is about to burst. The one on the right, my right eye. You just look at it, it's like, and that, my dears, is a spiritual malady. It is indeed, because basically my Ajna chakra was not correctly opened at that time, so I wasn't seeing the world clearly. I was seeing it through the veil of thought and emotion and stuff. Right, so, okay, let us read. Fieros' story time. Let's go. There was always some strange logic to my behaviour. See, I disagree with that now straight away. It's not strange. Why am I calling myself strange? Stop calling yourself strange. I'm not strange. There was always some logic to my behaviour. Mostly it consisted of linking together various disparate ideas, and I don't want to read this. But the reason why I don't like this is because this is coming from a place of really low self-esteem about the whole thing. Like, I sucked into myself a really ill mentality, as in I started to see myself as an ill person, and I started to have low self-esteem. I started to see myself as a kind of mentally disabled person. I took what I went through, and then I took on the narrative that the society around me believed about that time, and then I took that in on myself and made myself into a victim. This is all coming from some victim stance about the past and trying to explain the past as though it's silly, as though it's frivolous, as though it didn't mean anything to me, as though I never experienced it and my experiences weren't valid. So this is why I find this really hard to look at, because it's just I'm beating myself up in a way by this stuff, and I'm still allowing other people to dictate my perspective on things at this time in my life. Right, there was always some strange logic to my behaviour. Mostly it consisted of linking together various disparate ideas and memories and believing that they meant something highly significant. For example, when I was down the gym, getting lost among the pictures that hung on the corridor walls, I believed that I was attracting my ex-band members back into my life because, now bear with me on this one, I'd painted some pictures of them during an A-level art project, and I'd linked the predominant colours of the pictures to represent their spirits. Therefore, when I was looking at certain colours in other pictures, I believed I was communicating with their spirits and drawing them through the hidden mystical connections in the universe back into my life. Interesting. Why did I have to say interesting? basically, I feel sorry for myself. I feel sorry for this person writing this, because it's like I'm making fun of my previous self. And when I was in that experience, it was real for me, um, and now I'm like scorning my previous self and deriding my previous self and making fun of myself and turning myself into a laughing stock, basically. Okay, the breakdown. Ross writing post hospital, that's my dad said that. I did it on purpose. That's what I said anyway. Whether or not it was true, of course, was another story. But no, I genuinely do believe that I had a reason at the time to go so extreme. The whole idea was that I was trying to show my dad the impact he was having on me by continuing to call me unwell. I remember that, and I stand by that actually now. I stand by that behaviour. I basically acted out breaking down to try to show him what a negative effect he was having on me. I stand by that. I do it now. Because I was not happy with being called unwell. It had so much stigma attached to it, it made me feel like I was going crazy. Not that I was going through something that happens to many people of all ages. What? So I started shouting and screaming things like, someone keeps saying I'm evil. Someone keeps saying I'm not well. I'm evil. I'm evil. Who keeps saying I'm not well? Who is it? It's you, Dad, is what I was trying to tell him. You're the one who is basically judging me as being a bad person, who's judging me to be not well. You're the one who's saying these things, and you are not even recognizing that what you are doing is damaging to me. I did this in the full knowledge that at any point I could stop and just say, look, what you're saying is really beginning to annoy me. But whether in reality I actually could is another matter entirely. I remember alternating between screaming and shouting to being very calm when Owen came down the stairs, which kind of showed to me that I still did have some element of control. No, you see, I've taken on what my dad told me as my truth. Because my dad said to me afterwards, he said, you were very calm when Owen came down the stairs, which showed me that you had the element of control. And then I have taken on my dad's perspective while I'm writing this. I didn't feel that way. That's my dad's narrative that I took on my dad's narrative, basically. So, well, who knows? It all gets a little bit weird when you go through mental illness. There were moments when I thought I am controlling the universe. There were moments when I thought I was controlling the universe too. Those were good moments. I really like those. Once I was playing with the dinner table arrangements, I was trying to get my dad to stop drinking red wine. Yeah. At the time, I thought it symbolized blood, which it kind of does, and that it was feeding their energy vampirism. Yes, it kind of is, though, in a way, isn't it? Think about wine. When you're getting drunk on wine, you start becoming more irresponsible with your emotions, so you start like sucking in. The more alcoholic you become, you start sucking in energy from other people around you. You become like a negative vortex. So yes, that makes sense. I firmly believed that they were energy vampires, and then they were literally sucking the energy out of me and making me depressed. Yeah, I would go with that still, and making me depressed. Boy, did I believe some weird things at that time. See, one of the reasons why I say stuff like that is because I'm trying to not attract the judgment of other people by trying to go along with the views that I expect other people to have of that behavior, rather than to accept and acknowledge my own view of my behavior. So when I say stuff like that, boy, I did believe some weird things at the time. What I'm doing there is I'm trying to distance myself from who I from who I was, or from how I behaved, and I'm trying to sort of say, I'm trying to say to the audience member, or whoever's listening, or whoever's reading, I'm trying to like appease the audience member so that they don't judge me, so that they think I am normal now. It's like I'm trying to say, don't worry, I'm normal now. Don't run away. I'm still okay. I'm a good person now, or I'm a normal person now, or my life is normal now. Please don't run away. And that's the kind of thing that I've stopped doing. Like I don't apologize for this anymore. I don't pretend it didn't happen, but I don't. Oh man. But it's not the first thing that comes out of my mouth either. Yeah. The phoenix. That's another part. I remember this painting that I downloaded from the internet that was of a phoenix. The giant bird was just flying free of a mud/tar pit full of brown sludgy monsters. To me, the bird symbolised myself, and the monsters were my parents and the mental health team, which were all the people who were trying to pull me down into the black sludge of doom. Sounds good. Sounds right. I'm happy with that. I think that's a good metaphorical analysis. It's just me expressing myself through artwork. That's genuinely how I felt at the time too. I really felt that everyone had turned against me and that they were all trying to stop me from becoming the highest person I could be. Yeah. And they were. And that was not isolated to that particular incident. That carried on afterwards. I also remember making some crazy little cartoons that technically were quite amazing. I remember being very proud. Why do I have to put crazy? I say crazy like it's a bad thing. I remember being very proud and very fascinated by the drawings I was making, and I was totally absorbed in every tiny little detail. I made a cartoon for a... See, I'm speaking about these things as though they're bad, as though it's wrong to be completely absorbed in every tiny detail. It's all like I'm a bad person for having gone through this. I made a cartoon for a device that I thought would revolutionize family communications. Yeah, it was a dictaphone. It was I decided to put a dictaphone on my door outside so that my parents could leave messages for me on the dictaphone. I think it's quite a fun idea. Whatever. So when I was out, they could just like leave me little voice notes, kind of thing. This was before voice notes were a thing, by the way. Yeah. Basically, I called it the Phoenix. The dictaphone, I called it the Phoenix. At the time, I was obsessed with the Phoenix. It symbolised my dissolution of my old identity and my rebirth as a spiritual being, a butterfly that had been transformed by the light of consciousness. If you don't understand what I'm going on about, it's okay. I think I'm the only one that did. And I'm not too sure if I even do now. So I've just, again, I'm obviously really downtrodden, and I don't believe in myself. I don't have faith in myself, and I don't have self-validation that what I went through was what I went through, not that what I went through was what the other people went through. The other people went through what they went through. I went through what I went through. So I called this device the Phoenix, and the idea was that basically it was a dictaphone that I sellotaped to my door and would record messages on to communicate with my family. I thought this would revolutionise family communication because you could leave voice messages for people, which would include the added value of being able to hear the tone of voice of the person recording it, thus giving it an emotional edge over just a plainly written note. Yeah, because people are always complaining about snotty notes being left for other people, aren't they? God knows how or why I came up with that. That's quite a good idea, actually. And then what did it become? It became WhatsApp voice notes and Facebook voice notes. So it's not a bad idea. And then look at me having a go at myself about it. So hold on, sorry. I spent pretty much... God knows why I came up with that. How or why I came up with that. I was full of ingenious but pretty useless ideas like this during that time. Thanks. I spent pretty much all of my time coming up with new ideas for things I could do and then writing them down in one of my many little books. Oh, everything made sense to me at that time. I'm going to stop there because... fuck it. You know, it's... I don't like how I'm being so negative, basically, about what I went through. It's like, oh yeah, I just was checking where it was. I'm being so negative about myself, you know. It's like I'm totally devaluing everything, every experience I went through. Like, oh, I was so crazy back then. Oh, everything I thought was stupid back then. You know, every idea I came up with was useless. And you know what who's the voice that is? That's the voice of my parents and the voice of my brother and the voice of the mental health services. That's not my voice. That's what everyone else was saying and how everyone else was behaving towards me, and that I sucked that in, and that became part of my own way of speaking and thinking about myself, was to think of myself as worthless, and that whole experience was worthless to me, and yeah, and worthless to anyone else as well. So I'm not going to read it now. I'll do a little bit of that at a time, because it just upsets me that I was so I was so neglected, abandoned, abused, mistreated, cast aside. You know, no one valued anything I was doing. No one even tried to understand what I was doing, because everyone thought I was weird and ill. They thought that nothing I did had any value, and they could not be bothered to look into what I was doing to see if it did have any actual value. They just looked at it and it went, oh, it's too scary, I don't understand it. I came up with some other cool ideas. I came up with this like folding bed thing, which was like a fold-up bed, which I designed, and it was made of these like little panels, basically. So it was just a, it was like a way to fold up a mattress thing. Yeah, it was a way to fold up a mattress so you could store it. Rather than mattresses are big and heavy and cumbersome, aren't they? So it was a way to fold a mattress. So I don't think it really worked, but it was still quite a good idea. Yeah, so I was designing all kinds of stuff, and you know, I was just some whack. According to other people, I was just whack. It sucks, because that part of my life it was actually really, really creative, and probably that is representative of my highest potential. What I was doing in that period of my life is representative of what I'm truly capable of, like in terms of, oh, you should have seen the cartoons I was making. They were so detailed and so intense, and they were fun and funny, and the drawings I made, they were very clear and crisp and accurate. What else? Again, yeah, some of the adventures I came up with were good. They were cool. The songs I was writing were very honest, deep, different to what I was doing before. You know, and yeah, and I had a lot of energy, and it was all being channeled creatively, and everyone thought it was just me being insane. It's a shame. It's a real shame, because that part of me, that really intensely creative, imaginative, inventive, mystical little being that I was, because that wonder child kind of part of me got so damaged and squashed by the treatment I received during that time. Because of that, I find it harder to fully express myself, in the arts and in music and inventions, you know, basically a whole load of my abilities got a real self-esteem knock because of it. I mean, like, one of my journals is still actually being held by some medical profession in a file somewhere in some filing cabinet because it was used as evidence as I have a mental health problem. So they kept it, they sort of seized it and used it as evidence, and they've still got that. I should go back and get that because technically I have access. I'm allowed to, freedom of information, I'm allowed to get that. I should go and get that. Not so that I don't think I'll get much out of it these days because some of the stuff I was writing it's not valuable, but a lot of it was. But I should go and get it for the fact that it's mine, and why should they have that fucking thing? And it's stupid that they should use it as an evidence thing. And like, how come they have it still? How come they have that? You can't just have that. I didn't give it to you. You nicked it. You've actually stolen that from me. Yeah, fuck. I'm gonna get that. I will get that somehow. I'll have to call up the New Horizons Centre and ask them for it. Unless they've got rid of it. They might have got rid of it. If they got rid of it, fine. But if they haven't got rid of it, I'm having it back and I will dispose of it myself after reading through it and going, yeah. Do I have to do a full hour? Well, I need a wee, so... This is hard. This is hard. I don't want to do it. I'm just doing my own therapy and it's hard. I'm getting trapped in my brain again instead of being in my biggest self, my body and my heart and stuff. I'm getting trapped in the brain. Oh, I don't want to do it. I don't want to tell this part of the story. This part of the story is fucked. It's so hard. There's like so much in here. It's going to take fucking ages to get any sense out of this part. Well, let's try and tell some stuff from memory. I can kind of give you an overview of stuff by memory of a few big events. Right, I put my dad's book in the sink. I turned the tap on. I soaked my dad's book. He came up the stairs. He sees me putting my dad's book in the sink. He asked me in a fucking dickish voice, "What are you doing? What 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 are you doing?" It's such an unconscious voice of his that is full of judgment. He only said it once, by the way. But yeah, he used to say that a lot. He was always questioning my behaviour as though there was something wrong with me. Like I'd be going up into the loft quite often to I was using the loft as like a storage space, and so I go up because that's what it is, and I'd be using it as a way to get rid of stuff that was in my room that was too, like, I didn't want to think about. Because the way I work sometimes is that if things become too overwhelming with regard to creative ideas, I just need them out of my sight so that they're not so I can kind of feel them there, and I know what's there. And it's like if they're in my line of sight or if they're in the background or whatever, they kind of distract me, and I need sometimes a completely clear space to continue focus. So I'll stick stuff up in the loft, and I was using the loft as a kind of place to keep stuff that had a certain level of barrier to it, like, because you don't want to go up into the loft that often. So I would use it as a place to sort of keep stuff that it gives you like a certain level of, you have to have a certain level of motivation to actually want to go into the loft, if that makes sense, because it's slightly unpleasant to go up into the loft. So you put stuff there to give it rest time, and then leave it in there, and go up when you have to really want to go and see whatever's there before, because you have to kind of get the energy to go, oh, can't be bothered to go up to the loft. But but I was going up and down into the loft quite often, and my dad would just be constantly asking, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?" As though it was like a crime or something. As though a lot of the way my dad responded to me during that time in my life is that it's just as though everything I was doing was wrong, and everything I was doing was a crime of some kind, or a behavioural crime, and that everything I was doing was a symptom of mental illness. Like, oh, God, he's going up to the loft again. He's going up to the loft again. He's going up to the loft again. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? He's going up to the loft again. Yeah, get over it. It's not that much of a fucking problem. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? So anyway, one of my realizations or noticings of my dad was that he used books as escapism to escape actually relating to his family at that time. So he would sit there with a book like every evening or on the weekends, and he would just tune out from everyone, to the point where if you were trying to get his attention, he actually wouldn't hear you, or he would pretend not to hear you while he was reading a book, and he would just zone out from everyone. And I thought that was unhealthy, and also I realised that he was using that as a strategy to avoid actually interacting with anyone. So and he was addicted to it as well, and it was habitual, so he was no longer really questioning his behaviour on that. And I decided to show him this, to show him how attached he was to his book reading escapism pursuits. And you can see all the different sci-fi books there are all my dad's books that he read, right? And tuned himself out from other people in the family. And basically that's one of the reasons why he was an unavailable, slightly neglectful parent, was because he spent his whole time with a nose in a book rather than ever spending time with his family. So the family basically was had got locked into some rhythms of life that were no longer being questioned or challenged, and no one was living spontaneously anymore. So everyone had their role: dad, mum, me, brother, cat. And it was like a fixed system. So mum did the cooking most of the time, apart from once a week or so when my dad would do the cooking. That was a regular habitual pattern that was no longer discussed and no longer voted on. So it was just, it's like religious. It's basically like a religious unit somehow of traditions and stuff. And there are certain rules of relating. The whole thing was just like a continuous Groundhog Day kind of loop. It just went round and round and round the same patterns. The amount of times I heard my dad say, "Your tea's on the stairs, Ross." The amount of time I heard that during my early 20s is ridiculous. And it's like they couldn't even kind of recognize that they were actually saying the same things every day. They were doing the same things every day. They were watching the same things every day and reading the same things every day, as though I don't know. It's just it's bizarre how I couldn't understand how you can live in that way that's so unreal, like so undecided, so habitual, so like you made a decision a long time ago to read a sci-fi book, and that's just carried on, and it's like day by day by day that you're not even deciding your life anymore. You've just been swept along by the force of your own habits. Um, yeah. So, and my dad always had the big chair in the middle of the room because he had a back problem, and he bought himself this kind of chair that's supposed to help with his back. But it was clear that he was the final decision maker in the family, and everyone else had to kind of sit in these other. It's like he had a throne. He had this big throne in the middle of the room for himself, and everyone else had to sit around the edge. And I just found it really unequal. My dad had voting rights over the TV over everyone else as well, so it was just a very undemocratic family system. Um, my mum never got to watch what she wanted to watch. My mum never got to listen to whatever she wanted to listen to. And when we were like in the car, it was always what my dad wanted, or what I wanted, or what my brother wanted. So there's a very clear pecking order where it was basically dad, me, my brother, and then my mum with regard to choice in certain things. So my mum was like really low down on the pecking order for lots of things, actually. Uh, yeah. So how do we get onto that? Okay, so yeah, I noticed this stuff, and I was trying some kind of weird way, avant-garde way, of a theatrical kind of way, to show my dad directly, look, you're using this reading of books to tune yourself out to life, that you are no longer living. You have become dead to yourself. You've become a zombie. You have habituated your life so that you are no longer actually actively living. You are just a function of your past choices. You are no longer choosing to live day by day now. So I took one of his sci-fi books. Don't know which one it was, but it's gone now. It must have been the one he was reading at the time. I'm going to do it now. I'm going to do it with one now. I'm going to do it with one now. Let's do it with this one because who fucking cares? Yeah, I went to the sink and I turned the sink on, the tap on in the sink. I waited until he was there. I think. I mean, I knew I was going to do it because I'd gone upstairs with the book. I think it might have just been happenstance that he came up. But the thing is, the rhythms of the house were so regular that you would know that at a certain time in the evening, Dad was going to go upstairs, almost to the moment, to the dot. Anyway, so that's soaking that book in there. Right. So here we go. It's a nice wet little book now. Yeah. And now, who the fuck cares? My dad's gone. He's living somewhere else. He doesn't even fucking He only reads these books once. He's never going to read them again. Yet he keeps them there like they're some kind of special thing, and he never looks at them. They might be archaic, but they're lovely stories. I really like dear old Bilbo Baggins. I even have a hard copy of The Hobbit printed on Earth for Tolkien's bicentennial. Marvellous. So, yeah. So I soaked it, and he goes, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Then, this is probably a bit that made them think that I was insane. Then, this just kind of came out of me. I shouted at the top of my voice, "When are you going to wake the fuck up?" Or when the fuck are you going to wake up? Or when are you going to wake up? When the fuck are you going to wake up? When are you going to wake the fuck up? Yeah. And I still stand by that. Actually, I don't regret that. I don't take that back. I still stand by that, because as I see it, he needed a very sharp awakening, and I needed to penetrate through his habit, his habitual way of living, and his habitual judgmental way of living. You won't believe how judgmental my dad used to be, how close-minded he was, how blind to his surroundings he was, how dogmatic my dad used to be. My dad used to be a fucking arsehole, basically. Completely science-driven. Completely rigid in his thinking. Completely domineering and dominating with his views and his thinking and his belief systems. He was a narcissist in that sense. He had to be in control. He had to win every argument. And therefore, everyone around him who believed something different from him was wrong. And he would beat them verbally, intellectually. He wasn't like he wasn't a shouty kind of person. He would just rigorously beat your argument intellectually into the ground. He would just annihilate you, basically. He would argue you intellectually to give up any personal belief or any feeling or any opinion that differed from his, especially if it's to do with science. And he was just bolshy, as I say, dogmatic, rigid, was not open to other people's feelings or views. He was always right in his mind. The guy was a fucking arsehole. I watched back some videos, home videos, like from when I was a kid, and there's this part where I'm asking my dad like what the words to the Natalie Imbruglia song "Torn." I was asking him what they meant, and he goes, "Well, it's about," and he just pauses for ages, and I go, "You don't know, do you, Dad?" And he goes, "No, I do know. Oh, and then he never actually comes up with an answer. But it was that kind of thing where he just had to be right. He had to be right on everything. Otherwise, he might die or something. I don't know. But that was very, very insensitive. It's very insensitive. He was so insensitive. He didn't have empathy with anyone. He would just be. It's sad, really, because that can't be a very kind of enjoyable way to live, to be constantly on your guard about if anyone has a different viewpoint to you, and constantly feeling like you have to express all your opinions all the time to everyone, and constantly feeling like you have to come out on top of everything. So I shouted at him, "When are you going to wake the fuck up?" To try and pierce through his veil of self-illusion, or to pierce through the veil of thought that he was seeing the world through. He would always see everything through these thinking modes, He would never be really listening to what people were saying. He would have already prejudged what people were going to say, and he would be reacting against what people were saying before they'd even finished. He'd already made up his mind that they were wrong, or that they were doing something wrong. He was so judgmental of people as well, so judgmental of all different kinds of people. Michael Jackson, rich people, poor people, lazy people, spiritual people, gay people, all different kinds of people. He's just a ball of judgments, he was. Yeah, I'm making him out to sound like a demon. He was very, very difficult to talk to. And yeah, he was an arsehole. I can't say it any other way. He was just an arsehole. Even when he was pretending, even when he was trying to come across as caring, it just felt like he was pretending to care. It felt like he was only pretending to care in order to get his way about something, basically. He was a narcissistic, egotistical, rigid-thinking, mind-heavy bastard. He was a fucking asshole. And he thought that he had to be funny as well. So he was an arsehole. I'm just, during that period of my life, I feel like he was more, he was a better person when I was younger. But from my teenage years, I suppose, when my teenage years began, the guy just became an arsehole. Gradually more of an arsehole. Culminating in when I was in this mental health type of period in my life, he was the epitome of an asshole. He became intimidating. He became even more controlling. He became trying to fix me all the time. He became militant about the fact that everything I thought was wrong. He was upset with me reading spirituality books. He was acting as though he was constantly threatened by who I was, my behaviour. He was just a fucking asshole. So yeah, that's why I put his book in the sink to try and snap him out of it, I suppose, and it didn't work. I think that, I wonder what he thinks about that period now. I wonder whether, because sometimes things happen and then it takes your brain and your consciousness and your emotions a while to register that the things have happened. So that experience feels like it's gone in to him. And I wonder whether he has dreams or something of me, nightmares of me soaking his book in the sink and then shouting at him when the fuck are you going to wake up? I wonder if that force of energy there penetrated through his veil in that moment, and it just kind of went so deep that it just got buried or lodged or something, and then I don't know, but it seems to he's a much nicer person now. Never argues, doesn't argue about anything, accepts my point of view, doesn't try and change me, or very rarely tries to subtly manipulate my point of view or control my point of view. Or sometimes when he seems to be asking me questions that he thinks are trying to help me, I feel like he's trying to push me down a certain way of thinking about myself, or a certain way of thinking about behaviors or options, which is what he used to do all the time. He used to be passively aggressively trying to guide my thinking towards what he wanted me to do, rather than genuinely asking me what do I want to do. It would come in a way of he'd ask me, what do you want to do? And I'd say what I genuinely wanted to do, and then it would be well, that's not what I want Ross to do, so I'm going to subtly try and manipulate him round to my way of thinking about what I think that he should be doing, by questioning and trying to question me to direct me into doing what he wanted me to do. Fucking dick. Yeah. I've got a therapy session tomorrow. I've got a therapy assessment thing tomorrow at 4:45 p.m. yeah, it's just a telephone thing. They're going to call me up. So that's good, isn't it? Back doing some therapy to I don't know. What do I want to achieve in this therapy? Well, I want to regain some self-esteem basically for my work life and for my relationship life as well. Because I'm in a bit of a rut. I'm not in a rut creatively, but I'm in a rut with regard to actually making anything happen in the real world. In the wider world, not the real world, as the whole world is real, but in the wider world of my life, I'm a bit of a hermit basically, and I want to like regain some self-esteem to start promoting myself, I suppose, and to feel uh, like I can make something happen from the things that I've done creatively and the things I'm doing. I just feel like the part of me is lacking, which is my PR part, my public relational self, the part of me that should be telling people about myself and should be advertising and should be promoting and should be getting out there. And I'd like to, God, I don't know. And the relationship stuff as well. I just want to sort through some things basically that it's not really working to do it by myself. So yeah, and probably it's going to come out that a whole load of other shit's going to come out instead. So whatever. I'm not going to be too strict on it either. I don't want to I don't want to be too prescriptive for myself, because therapy can have other benefits. Like, you might go in there thinking, oh, I want to get this aspect of my life sorted out, and then what ends up happening is that you have to go through like this whole long-winded thing of resolving other little issues instead first, and then eventually, sometimes even because you resolved all these other little issues, your life changes, or you're able to then make the change that you want to make, that you wanted to make in the first place. But it sometimes takes a roundabout way of doing things. Yeah. Wanker. Yeah. My dad was a dick, man. Oh, God, what a fucking asshole. I think that'll probably do for this session. That's quite a good bit of reflection, isn't it? So I soaked his book because he was addicted to books, and he would tune out from the family, and his life was habitual, and I thought I could help, basically. I thought, having noticed this, that I could think of an action that would change this, that would help him see his addiction and his problem, and the fact that he was no longer living a real life anymore. He was living a zombified, numb, tuned out life. Now, okay, if I was to do this again, no, I wouldn't go anywhere near that kind of thing. I wouldn't. If it was me now, this is why I don't live with my dad. I live with my mum instead. This is why I don't live with my dad, because my dad does have certain habitualness to him that my mum doesn't have. Not so much anyway. Yeah, my dad has this kind of certain habitual phrases, catchphrases, ways of living. He's a bit kind of set in his ways almost. Weird. Really weird how he's become set in his ways. Not completely. Don't get me wrong. Not completely. But if this was happening now, I just wouldn't go anywhere near him. As in, I would look at a person like that, and I go, I'm not going to get involved. Just carry on. Because who am I to interfere with their life? Who am I to say that they're wrong, or to make that judgment on them? To say that they need to snap out of anything. Who am I? He hasn't asked for that. He hasn't asked for me to take his book and soak it. That's his property, And it was only because of the enmeshment of the family system that made any sense to do that. Like, it was an obvious affront to the family system to take his book and soak it in the sink. It was an obvious crime against him. It was an obvious rebellion against him as well. It was a rebellion against the patriarchy of him. It was an upset. It was a way to shake up. It was a way to shake up the system. So, yeah, my dad needs to fucking, I don't know. Oh, it feels good. We need to clear this out. Like, I've chucked a few of them away over the time since he left, but this is just satisfying. It's like revenge, tiny revenges. And I have to make it clear now, I'm really revenging against an old feeling of my dad. I'm revenging against an old memory of my dad. I'm not revenging against him now. He's a very different person now. But you know, I still have to acknowledge the shit that happened, and I have to make peace with that and resolve that, because although he's not that same arsehole anymore, he was a fucking arsehole, and there's still a massive reservoir of residue of feeling about that. Bitch. This looks quite cool, actually. Oh, I'm such a bad person for ripping books up. Oh, yeah. This is quite fun. It's sort of soothing because it's wet. Burn the books. My name is Hitler. Maybe I was Hitler, briefly. Maybe that's who I was channeling Hitler when I was burning books. You shall not live in your habitual ways. You shall burn the books. I will not burn them, I will wet them. We will wet the books. Can you imagine Hitler like that? We're not going to exterminate anyone, we're just going to wet them with a hose. That would have been much better, actually. Why don't you do that, Hitler? Stop trying to kill everyone. We're just going to wet you. You should be exterminated. We think that you are scum. Only the Aryan race is not scum. So, if you're not Aryan, we will wet you with a hose. The final solution is to wet people with the hose.